In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Gerhard Mathangani.
Former Jets quarterback and Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers once famously said, RELAX, relax. And that's exactly what former Alabama players are telling Alabama fans that might be freaking out a little bit over current head coach Kalen DeBoer. The latest to step up is Josh Cuevas. We heard from him at the Senior Bowl last week, looking to make a name for himself. He's telling everybody that Kalen DeBoer is the right man for the program. He's not the only one doing that. This is a kind of a resounding chorus here, Patrick, because you have a lot of guys, and I think he's been with Kalen DeBoer. But when you follow a legend, never easy, and it just felt like Alabama fans, especially after this past week, have some growing frustrations with them. And so I kind of like.
You talked about there's a lot of see him at the Senior Bowl, but ended up opting out due to injury, and it comes off the back of an improvement season. But you know, when you're the head coach at Alabama, just because you are following up Nick Saban, you're going to be held to this pedigree that I don't think any coach would really want to be held to. It's so tough. I mean, it goes to show Gerhard Mayo and him having to follow up Bill Belichick, and obviously now DeBoer having to follow up Nick Saban. I mean, that's no easy feat, and so you get held to this standard, and the standard has been the standard for so long at Alabama that you know it almost feels like people have forgotten. Like, hey, you know, remember what Nick Saban would always. Maybe DeBoer is trying to find his process now, and these players are just trying to tell everyone, you know, maybe we need to RELAX a little bit.
I know. And if you're looking at Kalen DeBoer through a prism, I mean, it's been 2 years. First year, I know they did not make the college football playoff. Last year, they did make the college football playoff, won a game, beat a team that they couldn't beat the 2 times before in Oklahoma. And then, you know, obviously played against the national champion, who ended up being the national champion, who destroyed everybody. They destroyed Alabama there as well in the Rose Bowl. As you take a look at some of the numbers for Coach Kalen DeBoer going into this season, 28-8 record, 8-4 against top 25 teams. How soon Bama fans and others kind of forget about that. Obviously, an appearance in the college football playoff this past year, scored just 3 points in that 35-point loss to the reigning national champion in the Indiana Hoosiers, and 4 losses in the last 2 seasons, most since the 2007 season. This is to me an interesting point in Alabama's tenure, so to speak, because yes, Alabama expects to win the national championship just about every year, but keep in mind the reason why Nick Saban got out of the game, or one of the reasons why he got out of the game, he started to see a shift. And he understood that the teams that he was coaching in 2007, 2010, 15, 17, and even to, I would say, 2019, 2020, those teams you can't build football teams like that anymore. It's completely changed. And so I think a lot of people have to recalibrate their brains about what a college football championship team looks like, and maybe Indiana is the first step to that. People recalibrating that this isn't the old days when LSU and Alabama and even Georgia to a certain extent dominated. You have to build your team differently, and I think Kalen DeBoer is the right man to build it in this day and age.
Yeah, and I just think it takes some time, and it goes back to what I was saying, I believe about a month ago, about how Curt Cignetti has totally ruined the expectation meter when it comes to fan bases and what coaches can do in year 1, year 2, year 3. I mean, I don't think you're going to look around and see another example of Curt Cignetti. It's such an anomaly And I still can't believe that he's been able to do that at Indiana
Mm-hmm.
in just such a short amount of time. I mean, only 2 losses, and the last loss came what will be almost 2 calendar years by the time the next season rolls around there. It makes no sense. So, I mean, you can't really judge these coaches off of these first 2 seasons. But, I mean, when you're at Alabama, that's just going to be what it is, and especially in the SEC, because all of these teams around you are going to get better.
Right.
We saw we just talked about it yesterday. I mean, Kentucky is a top 10 transfer portal class. They hired Will Stein. I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last year. I mean, they're going to improve. Texas A&M, it looks like they're going to continue to improve. And then obviously Ole Miss and LSU with their Cold War, they might finish 1-2 next year. Who knows? So, I mean, that it just becomes such a loaded conference when you start to get down to it. But, I mean, you just have to temper your expectations for a little bit. But I will say this. Obviously, year 1 under Nick Saban didn't really go that well for Alabama.
Lost 6 games.
Yeah. Year 2 got better. Year 3 is when he started to take off, and that's when he won the first national championship, going, I believe, 14-0. So, I mean, this is right around that time where Kalen DeBoer could start to follow that track, so to speak. But, I mean, you just got to give these guys some time. One of the main problems this year was that run game.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I would not expect the run game to be as lackluster as it was this year next year.
Yeah, I mean, it was so bad, and the offensive line play was bad as well. They had the quarterback to kind of make it all happen there. We heard from Josh Cuevas. He was, of course, a member of the Senior Bowl, and there you see head coach Kalen DeBoer in Mobile there, as well as the NFL draft process starts for a lot of his guys, former Alabama guys that are going to the pros. But Cuevas talked specifically about his head coach.
I've never played under Coach Saban. So I've always been with Coach DeBoer from Washington up until now. But I can say that that the fans need to have the utmost trust in Coach DeBoer. He knows how to take a team and turn them into a national championship contesting team. And once everybody's really bought into his process, I think he's going to do great things with that program.
So there's a guy that actually played for Coach Kalen DeBoer at Washington and Alabama. I think it's also telling when you have guys that played for Nick Saban, recruited by Nick Saban, stuck around with the program, and then had a new head coach. Then Kalen DeBoer walks in. To me, you kind of get it from you see it from all angles. You see it from a guy that's been with the guy for a long time, and you see it for a guy that walks in and commands the room, so to speak.
There's one thing that I caught at the end of that soundbite. Did you hear it as well?
What do you say? Like, what caught your ear specifically?
Once everyone buys in.
Yeah,
Is that him kind of hinting that there were some guys that weren't bought in this year? I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing to say after a season where, you make your first college football appearance with Tide, meaning Kalen DeBoer. Obviously, it didn't end the way you wanted it to.
Right.
But, I mean, look at Oregon. It didn't end the way they wanted it to either. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting that he came out and publicly said, once everyone buys in, because in my mind, that makes it sound like, some guys weren't actually bought in this year. And then it starts to make you wonder, and it's like, okay, then you take a look at some of the areas where they were faltering this year.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, is he trying to call out some of his former players now that he's not on the team anymore? Maybe.
And there's been inklings of that, but this whole team, like the premise over for the whole season was, I forgot they played mini man on Friday, and there was just this whole energy and this whole aura of, hey, it's us versus everybody. So I'm actually kind of shocked to hear that part of it, but it does, raise a question in my mind as well about the state of the program. I just felt like this team was just humming when they were on that 4-game stretch, and they did something that no SEC team had done, was beat 4 straight ranked opponents, back-to-back Saturdays before the bye week there, and then they just did not look the same. They didn't look the same kind of team when they played LSU and when they played Oklahoma, and even when they played Auburn in the Iron Bowl. It didn't look like the same team. So I wonder if he's hearkening back to that moment where this team felt uneven. Obviously, the loss to Florida State at the beginning of the year, an embarrassment, seemed to get the train back on the tracks for the middle part of the year, and then shaky towards the end of the year, and then, of course, a major blowout at the end of the season. So start the season, end the season with blowout, embarrassing losses, so to speak. And so I wonder if Cuevas is saying, hey, look, if we can get everybody playing the same way that we were playing in mid-September and October, then we're fine. So whether that means on the field, off the field, or a combination of both, I do find that interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I also start to think not only the players but the coaching staff as well, where some of the coaches not fully bought into DeBoer's process, because I mean, it looked like sometimes, you know, the preparation wasn't really there. They almost looked lost, especially that South Carolina game. That was the first game that I really noticed, like, man, this isn't really the same Alabama team, but you know, we chalked it up as a one-off at the end of such a grueling stretch of nothing but ranked teams. But moving ahead to next year, do you think this is a make-or-break season for him? I know it's early. We're still more than half a year away from kickoff.
I'm going to answer this two ways. I think it is a make-or-break season. I think it should not be a make-or-break season.
Yeah.
So it is, in the sense that, like, I do feel like there's going to be a lot of growing frustration if there's another 4-loss team that rolls out there, especially if they look the way that they do this year.
Yeah.
I think it would be the height of stupidity to get rid of him at this point now, judging where college football is. I just think in this NIL world, you need a certain kind of coach. And we're seeing it with Kirk Cignetti. We're seeing it at Ohio State. We're seeing it in Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman. We're seeing it with different young coaches who are having to navigate this space. I just feel like if you are grading him by Nick Saban production, it's foolish, because I don't think we're going to get that from anybody, from anybody moving forward. I just don't feel like the sport is built that way anymore. So yes, it is a make or break season. I don't think it should be a make or break season, but nobody asked me my opinion as far as the Alabama brass. Greg Bird's not going to ask me if I think that he should be fired or not. But I do think if the noise gets loud enough, if the frustration is there enough, I do think that they could make a move. The one thing I will say, though, is that Greg Byrne, he went to bat for this guy 48 hours after Nick Saban retired. He basically had his guy within 2 days. Yeah. So I think it will take something egregious for Greg Byrne to pull it. I just feel like the Bama fan base, who is so used to stacking championships, wants to be back a part of that race again. So I don't think they would accept anything less than maybe a semifinal appearance or so.
And I go back to what was said around the rumors around the boosters after week one, after that devastating loss to Florida State. There were a lot of reports that the boosters were kind of uneasy with Kalen DeBoer, and it felt like the fire alarms were going off. The panic button was pressed for sure after that game. And what did he do? He started to right the ship. One of those sound bites that we ended up playing after week one was him going on the midweek teleconference and said, I think we have we have a good football team. Yeah. So I don't know. That didn't really sit well with anybody. But when you take a look at next year's schedule, I mean, they replaced the West Virginia game, unfortunate, with the East Carolina game. Florida State, you could have your get-back game against them. South Carolina, Georgia, Texas A&M, Chattanooga, and Auburn at home. But, I mean, you look at that away stretch, Kentucky's going to be a better team. Mississippi State, they're still probably going to try to figure some things out. Tennessee's always going to be a close game there with a rivalry. And then LSU looks like a dominant team. Yeah. And then who knows what you're going to get with Vanderbilt there. But, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that, you know, they sit here at 8-4 again. Yeah,
I mean, you talk about road games in Death Valley. You talk about a road game at Neyland Stadium where they've had some issues. Those are two really tough ones. And then, obviously, they play Georgia and Texas A&M, who are both expected to, you know, have good teams once again this year. Both teams return their starting quarterbacks, and Gunnar Stockton and Marcel Reed. There is a world out there where they do lose 4 games once again. Yeah. It could be the 4 I named. It could be another stretch of those games as well. But it does set up quite favorably, though, for them. If they do, let's just say they have a 1 or 2 loss season, that could be a team that has one of those 4 spots that has the bye, and now you're not having to play in that first round. So it sets up really well for them. It's not as daunting as maybe Florida's schedule was last year, or we've seen some other teams in the SEC that they have a absolute gauntlet to play through. It's not an impossible schedule, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I just think, in my opinion, they might be on the wrong side of the playoff not expanding next year.
Right.
That came out last week that
yeah.
the playoff is going to stay at 12 teams. I think if they moved up to 16 teams, they could get in with 3 losses looking at that schedule. But, I mean, I don't see them getting in with 3 losses again unless the 3rd loss is in the SEC Championship.
It's exactly right. Exactly right. That defense will be relied upon going into next season. Lost a lot of stars, including Deontay Lawson, who you talked about moments ago. There's Coach Kalen DeBoer and what he expects from his guys in the fall.
I'm fired up about that group. Fired up about what those guys bring, both the returners and then also the newcomers that come in. I think we got longer. We got bigger. I think we got more athletic. I think we got some guys that both in the program and guys that have come into it that are that really care, not just about what they can do personally and for themselves, but also care about being a great teammate. And so again, captain type caliber people that are coming in the program. So I think we really have hopefully upgraded. That's my hope. Can't say we've done it because I haven't seen him on the football field as a whole, but I really like the direction that's going. And with the whole secondary that returns, really every starter there. I know Damani started a lot, so count him in there too. But I'm really looking forward to what the defense brings. So obviously, probably the biggest loss is the 3 linebackers there, and bringing in Caleb, and then some of our young guys that were being groomed a year ago for this opportunity. I'm excited what they can do too.
One of Alabama's road games is on Rocky Top over at Neyland Stadium. We head to Rocky Top next here on Southeast Sports Plus. Stay with us. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we have great basketball to attend to here on today's show, but we're actually going to start with some big football news as well. And it is a relatively recurring story in the world of college sports. We have our good friend Sam Granville in from Knoxville, Tennessee, to join us here. Sam, let's start on the gridiron because it seems like when you want to fight with the NCAA, you take off the boxing gloves and you just strap on a pen, you lawyer up, and you sue the NCAA. The latest is Tennessee star quarterback. I was going to say former star quarterback, but he could be right back in a Vols uniform next year. Joey Aguilar, who obviously had a really strong season under y'all's head coach there in Josh Heupel, but now going to sue the NCAA, filing a lawsuit to try to maintain his eligibility. What do you make of this story and just kind of the ways that this thing has been put in the light of the bigger picture of what we're seeing with college athletics?
Yeah, at this point, it's not really much of a surprise to anybody, and like you said, just the way that things are going, and, might as well, every college athlete's got to have a lawyer on retainer at this point. But no, Joey, I mean, we've known since the end of the season that he was going to try and fight for an additional year. We didn't know if that was an actual possibility or a long shot. And then when you start seeing these cases go into regional and state courts versus, federal courts. And that's when you're like, okay, we've seen this story. We've seen this recently. We saw this recently down in, Alabama when a basketball player decided that, he wanted to return from the G League and come play at his former school. And, okay, let's go through a local court that, may or may not have some ties to the university. And now we're seeing here with Joey, it's okay, we're going to take this to a local court and see what happens and try to get this going, because in this latest lawsuit, it says, you can see in the quotes from the public request, it's, hey, Joey's got to either figure out right now, am I preparing to play spring football with the Vols, or am I preparing to get myself ready for the NFL draft, which is in April? So he's in this tight window, and he's trying to speed things up. Sorry about that. Trying to speed things up, and right now, I think this is the best way for him to actually have a chance is to go through this local court system, and then we'll see what happens from there. But right now, it seems like things are being pushed a little more aggressively, and I think Vol fans would welcome him back with open arms. And again, in that lawsuit, it says, yes, Joey has a roster spot if this is going to be pushed forward, and a roster spot in the tune of $2 million. So that's a nice roster spot, and probably not what he'd be making anywhere next season on any NFL team.
I mean, you take a look at, we've been talking about the whole Trinidad Chambliss situation. That one obviously filed in an Oxford court. You brought up Charles Bediaco's situation being filed over there in Tuscaloosa. This one being filed in the Knox County court. I mean, do you think his camp waited to see how some of these other lawsuits panned out before they were like, hey, you know, I want to jump in and I want to try and get this figured out?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, I'm by no means am I an expert when it comes to, you know, the rule of law, you know, the law of the land, anything that's pertaining to, you know, a law degree. But that is what law is all about. It's, hey, this case, you know, this case has had this result. This case has had this result. And because that case had this result, we can now talk about, well, if that case had that result, why can't my case have that result?
Right.
And, you know, that's, of course, in the most simple of layman terms, you know, but I'm sure it's a lot more official when they're talking in front of a judge. But, you know, that's basically what's happening here is we're going, hey, you know, Diego was the first one to make this happen last year when getting those extra years of collegiate eligibility through playing with the NJCAA. And now, you know, hey, I had that too. And you know, Joey's already played, you know, 6-7 seasons of college football, but it's okay. What college football? You know, is it NCAA college football? Is it NJCAA college football? And so far, you know, he's only had the 4, you know, the 3 official seasons in the NCAA playing with App State and with the Vols. So when we really start getting into it, it's okay. Yeah, he's had a long college football career, but has it been a long NCAA college football career? And then when you're seeing that in the NBA and you're saying, well, this guy played for an NBA team, but now, you know, he only played 1 season of college basketball. So, yeah, it's a can of worms. And right now, I think the Vol fans are like, hey, you know, if everybody else is opening that can of worms, we want some too, because there's a big difference. I just saw, you know, an SEC podcast ranked the potential starting quarterbacks for next season in the Southeastern Conference, and they had George McIntyre as the projected starter for the Vols, and they had him a 16 out of 16. And I think if you put Joey Aguilar into that slot, he's right up there with the Arch Mannings and the Trinidad Chambliss. You know, the guys, he led the conference in passing last year.
Right.
So I think that's a night and day difference between this Vol team and what their ceiling is. And I think everybody on Rocky Top is paying close attention to this right now. Going, all right, you know, if it's working for everybody else, please let this one work out in our favor.
Absolutely. We'll go to basketball here in a second, but I know you said you're not a law expert. Neither am I. Do you expect to see Joey Aguilar in a Vols helmet next fall?
I would say when it comes to situations like this, you don't want to get your hopes up. And so I think a lot of Vol fans are expecting that it won't happen. And I think that's how they should be looking at it, is expect that it doesn't happen, be pleasantly surprised if it does happen.
Fair. Yeah.
I think that's kind of where I stand right now, is I think it's a long shot. If I had to, you know, just give you an answer of do I think it's going to happen, I think no, it's not going to happen. But you know, a couple weeks from now, when all is ruled and we come back and talk on here and we say, hey, the Vols got Joey Aguilar as starting quarterback for the next season, I'm all for it.
Absolutely. I know Josh Heupel shares that opinion with you. He'd be all for it there as well. Let's flip over to basketball. This is a Tennessee team at the beginning of the season. We were, I guess, trying to figure this squad out under head coach Rick Barnes, but it feels like they have really found something here over the last month or so, definitely in the last about 2 weeks. 3 straight wins, including a big win over Alabama. Their most recent win there over Auburn this weekend. What do you make of where this team stands right now as they enter the back half of SEC play and really rev it up towards the end of February?
Yeah, I think this most recent win against Auburn and really this last stretch where, you know, in each of these last 3 victories, at Alabama, at Georgia, and at home against Auburn, who was entering on a 4-game win streak. I think in all 3 of these games, they dealt with a lot of adversity. And most recently in that game with Auburn, their biggest piece of adversity was, hey, their starting center, Felix Okpara, who has started every game since he arrived on Rocky Top last year. He's out. He's got a calf injury. It was an unexpected injury that we still don't really necessarily know what happened. You never know when, there's all of a sudden a snowstorm that comes through, and then the next day your starting center has a calf injury. You never know what that is. But, now he's going to be out for another game starting tonight against Ole Miss. And that's the first piece of adversity coming into this game is, okay, your best shot blocker, your best defender, the only returning starter from last year, he's out, and they still found a way to win. They had a nice, 16-point advantage against Auburn. They jumped out on them, and then they saw Auburn kind of work their way back in, started to get back into the game a little bit. We saw some of those turnovers, and for a little bit in that game, you're like, oh, no, this can't be Kentucky all over again. We can't have another one of these happen here, but they held strong at the end. You had your guys like Bishop Boswell, who was just all over the court, making every play that needed to happen, whether that's, an offense, a rebound as a guard. He finished with 8 rebounds. He had multiple guards finish with 6, 7, 8 rebounds, and, they're leading the nation in offensive rebounding right now. But I think they are in a great spot right now. If they can keep stringing along, we talked last week is, hey, this stretch, is this a gettable stretch? And, with that win over Auburn, and then, hopefully tonight you can take care of business against Ole Miss. This is a game that they should win. Go on the road against Kentucky on Saturday, and you get revenge, and then you're really, really feeling good about this team right now.
Sam, you and I talked last week about Nate Ament and his ability to play the 3 or the 4. Do you expect now, with Felix being out, him to play the 4 more, maybe even spend some time at the 5, or what does that versatility look like for Nate?
Well, when it comes to the front court, and this is what we saw at the beginning of the season, right at the end of non-conference play when Cade Phillips went out, he's the starting power forward for this year, is, the Vols have more depth in their front court than really any team, most teams in the country. Florida is one that stands out when it comes to front courts, but Tennessee has so much depth and so many players that they're confident in playing, whether that's the true freshman Dwayne Brown, who's now started 8 games this season, or JP Estrella, who's one of the only returning players from last year. He missed last year with an injury. He can, play the 4 or 5. Jalen Carey, you got the transfer from Vandy, who's coming in, and he's one of the best ISO scorers in the post. But Nate Ament, he's definitely someone who, at this point, is playing the best basketball since he stepped foot on campus. And, he's averaging 22 points over the last 5 games. As we see here, it's 23 in the last 3 games. So he's definitely taking his game to the next level. I think they love the way that he's guarding the perimeter. And we also see that he, can go in and block some shots. But when you have, 1, 2, 3, 4 players that, even with your starting front court from the beginning of the season, is now on the sidelines with Felix Okpara and Cade Phillips, neither of them suiting up to play the last game or tonight against Ole Miss, but you still got 4 or 5 guys that can rotate through those 4 and 5 position. I think that's a quality that the Vols have that not many teams have, so you don't have to force Nate down into the post, but I think he's shown that he's very capable of doing so. But they like his ability to stay out on the wing, guard somebody with all that length that he's got, and then push the ball up the court, especially when the last game we saw, their primary ball handler, Jacoby Gillespie, he was in foul trouble for much of the second half, so you needed guys like Nate and Bishop to push the ball up the court, and we saw that on Saturday night against Auburn.
And I think for the average Tennessee follower who hadn't really paid attention too closely, they had heard about Nate Ament and how he's got this NBA draft lottery potential, but through the first half of the season, you were probably left wondering, like, where is that potential? But as you mentioned, it seems like he's starting to find his groove and improve his stock over the last 3 games. What has been the most impressive aspect of his game over those last 3 games to help Tennessee on this win streak?
I think he's just being more aggressive, and a lot of that has to do with, just having that self-confidence. But we've talked about this before this season is, Nate Ament, he's not a player, no player really in Rick Barnes' system for, playing the wing, the stretch forward, is really given the green light to say, hey, go take 30, 40 shots. No Rick Barnes player is given a green light to go try and average 30
Carmelo
points a
Anthony.
game. So, yeah, it's been a while since, we've seen a player that's going to come out and do that. And I think Nate, could put up some incredible numbers if he was in a system that gave him a green light to do that. But I think being in a Rick Barnes system where it's, hey, let's slow the ball down. Let's, be the team that gets into the front court offense that, maybe has one of your forwards come up, catch the ball in the high post, get a runner underneath and hit him, on a backdoor cutter. That's that Rick Barnes basketball system that, is really the old school style. And so we're not going to see Nate come out and average 30 points because he's playing in a Rick Barnes system. But I think as of late, you can just feel his confidence. I saw, in the game against Auburn the other night, he had a block down on one end, and then on the other end, he was coming down and he was full on looking for the poster dunk. Ended up being a foul, and he was not able to, complete the dunk, but you could just see it. Okay, he's now got that. He's got that next level mode where he's just turning it on. That Mamba mentality's coming in, and he's really looking to get a bucket. And when you see a young player like that you see that look in his eye, you're like, man, he's going to be dangerous for the next, 10, 15 years playing professional basketball.
Yeah, exactly right. And you teed this up perfectly because Coach Rick Barnes talked about it. Nate Ament's shot selection. Listening to Coach.
Yeah, I don't, he'll make some of those shots. I mean, he'll miss, but again, he impacts the game. He's gotten better defensively, and he had some big rebounds tonight too. I mean, those rebounds were big that he came up with, but free throw line, he was great. How many fouls did he draw? He drew what? How many fouls did he draw? Was it 9? Is that right? Yeah. That's huge. I mean, that helps his teammates. But, Nate, I really felt that he's been good all year. I've told everybody that. He's never played on the perimeter, both offensively and defensively, the way he is now. So he's came to college, a whole different game, physicality, all that. But I really felt mentally, he had his good moments but whatever, right prior to since the Florida game, he has seen the game totally different. You can just see it. You can just feel it. He's talking. He's coming to the bench. I mean, tonight he made a great cut against his own the first time they went there, and he's starting to tell guys what's going on out there, and he's getting so much more vocal. And again, he's just seeing the game at a level where I think he let go of whatever pressure he was holding on to, and because he wants to be so good, he wants to almost be perfect. And we had a talk about it. I said, you're never going to be perfect, but you just got to be who you are and play. And really, starting with the Florida game, he's just been a whole different player mentally.
So that was head coach Rick Barnes on Nate Ament's shot selection, but that was not the soundbite that made the headlines over the course of the I would say the last maybe 3 to 4 days. Coach Rick Barnes, obviously, he was saying it jokingly, saying it very tongue-in-cheek, but made a reference to, I don't know if my guys are betting on basketball games. I don't know if either you or Sam Rothman or KCK were even in the building at the time, or maybe talk to some of your colleagues that were in the building at the time. How did that feel in the moment? Because it felt like, just listening to the press conference, it felt like everybody knew that he was joking. Everybody laughed with him. But then, Tennessee cut it out of their normal press conference as far as what they put online. There was some heat there as well. What was your general reaction when you heard that?
No, Coach Barnes is one of my all-time favorite coaches, just because when he's in these press conferences, he's going to say exactly what he's thinking, and he's not going to give you that, politically correct response or however you want to look at it. But it absolutely was a joke. And for any platform, anybody out there this week that's saying, he needs to, his team needs to be investigated, or Rick Barnes shouldn't have said this, or he should be in trouble for saying this, absolutely not true whatsoever. He, it is the first time that I think he's said a comment that I've watched him look over to, his guy, his media guy, and go, should I have said that? Like we should probably, let's start over with that. So this is the first time that I've seen him look over for confirmation and be like, yeah, sorry about that. Probably shouldn't have said that. But no, It absolutely was a joke. All the media members in the room knew exactly after that it was a joke, and anybody who's going around saying that it's not a joke was not in the room at the time. So that's for somebody who was in the room and 100% was a joke. Everybody in there had a nice chuckle, and we moved on to the press conference. But yes, it was a hilarious comment. And hey, for some of the turnovers that we've seen this year, they've been pretty bad. So it definitely was. It definitely hit home for anybody who's watched fall basketball this year.
I feel like all this does is back up my statement of this has to be the craziest year in recent memory of coach press conferences. I mean, you got Calipari, who you got to listen to him every night because you don't know what he's going to say. We just played Sean Miller, and what he thinks. Vic Schaefer and his vendetta and his stench. We just played Mick Cronin over there at UCLA saying that his team was so bad. And then you got the whole betting on games. I'm telling you, we might just do, at the end of the season, we might just do a segment on it. Here's the best sound bites of the year, because it's just been nothing but pure gold.
It has been absolutely amazing this past year. Yeah, and as you said,
I think it's one of those things where, they see, man, college basketball is at a place that it's never been before. We're seeing so many things happen that have never happened before, and they're like, well, I guess if college basketball is going to be completely unhinged, then we might as well let the floodgates out with what we're going to say.
Exactly. Speaking of something that's never happened before, in the history of Tennessee and UConn women's basketball, no Tennessee team's ever been blown out by 30. I don't know if this is a microcosm of a bigger issue. I know they're 6-1 in the SEC. And UConn is the best team in the country right now as far as one of the best teams in the SEC. It is 2 straight losses, though. Broke a 7-game winning streak. What do you make of where the women's program is right now after that loss to UConn and now as they head back to the SEC?
I think UConn is a game where they certainly, let it get out of hand in the second half, where they certainly could have played it closer. Any time that it's a tie ball game at the halftime and then you end up losing by close to 40 or close to 30, excuse me, it's a complete collapse. And that's exactly what Kim Caldwell said. She said, hey, for, 15 minutes of basketball, we looked like we were the better team. It's just a shame that we play 40 minutes of basketball because, we certainly were not the better team for the majority of the game. And this one I honestly don't think is as big a deal. You hate to see that 30-point marker, and you hate to see that final score. But if you watch the first half and you saw the trouble that the Lady Vols defense gave UConn the same way that it did last year when they played in Tennessee and they ended up beating them. That was the last team that UConn has lost to, since going on and winning the national championship. But, if you see some of those things, you see the potential for this Tennessee group to be, okay, we're fine. We think we can compete against anybody. But then you also see the potential for, hey, we can lose to anybody real quick, like we saw last week where we got blown out by a team that we should have had no business getting blown out by with Mississippi State. So I think you take care of business in the midweek matchup on the road at Georgia, and then, hey, you lock in for a brutal weekend battle at South Carolina. That one's back in the national spotlight. If you compete in that, I think everybody all of a sudden forgets that you lost by 30 a couple days ago to, yes, the number 1 team in the country.
Sam, I think I asked you this question last week. I'm going to ask you again now that the UConn game is over with. Do you like these non-con matchups in the middle of the season, in the middle of the SEC slate, now that the UConn game is in the past?
I think the team and the coaching staff likes them a whole lot more than the fans do, in the sense of no fan wants to watch their team lose by 30 in the middle of the season. But I think it's a necessary game, because if Coach Caldwell truly thinks that her team has the potential to go on a Sweet 16 style run, they're going to need to say, well, yeah, we know what we're up against when playing the best teams in the country, and so far this season they've played NC State, they've played UCLA, they've played UConn, they've played all these teams, that aren't even teams that they're going to meet night in, night out in conference season, just teams that they're definitely going to see in the national, or, that are going to be around in the national tournament and may have to get matched up against, or familiar opponents. So You don't like it, again, as a fan, because you're like, man, we hate seeing that final score. It gives us no hope for what's coming up. But I think it's good in terms of, okay, if you don't come and play your best basketball, you can lose, and you can lose very badly.
Absolutely. Sam, thank you so much for your time here, man, and enjoy tonight's game against Ole Miss.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Absolutely. Sam Granville joining us from Knoxville, Tennessee. Lots of great basketball there. They're watching a potential. I'm not sure if he's going to be an NBA superstar, but Nate Amen's really kind of coming into his own. I think Sam illustrated that perfectly about what his trajectory is, and tonight he could just take another step.
Yeah, and I think he's just got to keep doing what he's been doing, driving to the basket. He gets to the free throw line a lot more often now than he did before. He's not going to specifically the last game, I think he only made 4 shots from the field, but he was north of 10 free throws. So, that's going to be his game. But as Sam mentioned, it seems like the confidence is now there, and he's just got to keep rolling with it.
Absolutely. That game tips off tonight. Tennessee, a big double-digit favorite. Last I saw was 12 points against Ole Miss tonight. That game tips off at 6 o'clock Central Time. Stay with us here on Southeast Sports Plus. We talk some more college basketball next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, there are 3 teams right now sitting with a 6-3 record through the first 9 games in the SEC. That is Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Kentucky. And that's a Kentucky team that I don't think a lot of people would have put in that position maybe 3 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago, they were not playing really good basketball. They have seemed to turn the corner a little bit, but their I think most impressive win so far, especially in the last, I would say, 4 weeks or so, was a big win over Arkansas in Fayetteville. They go to Bud Walton Arena. I've talked about the Bud Walton Magic, and so has Courtney Mims and others who've talked Arkansas basketball. That's a really impressive win for this group, bouncing back after what I would think, it wasn't a bad loss, but bouncing back after what I think is an interesting stretch here for the Wildcats.
Yeah, and you take a look at that win streak that they had before, but you were almost holding your breath because during the win streak, there were 2 large comeback wins.
Right.
And it just felt like this was not really a situation that you wanted to be in. And they went down big against Vanderbilt last week.
Yep.
And we played last week the Mark Byington soundbite where he was like, I tell the coaches these things where, certain tendencies, and obviously he brought up the tendency that Kentucky, when they go down big at the halftime, they like to surge back, and it just didn't work out. I think this was the most impressive win that they've had in quite some time, just because they really didn't go down big at all, and they were able to, there was a time period in the second half where they were docked with 3 technical fouls within 38 seconds, and the third one being on Mark Pope himself, which I'll say this about the whole technical fouls in this game. It just felt overbearing. There were some. I think the Malik Ewan one was just a little bit insane. In my opinion, it looked like he just accidentally dribbled it off of the Kentucky guy.
Right.
I didn't really think that there was any harm there. But when you take a look at these type of games in general, you don't want them to be dictated by fouls or it's the same thing in football. We'll talk about this later this week. Why should a game be dictated by, in football, the targeting rule? Because the next game you have to sit out the first half. It just shouldn't come down to these things. Here's what I always thought: the fans want to come see the players. They don't want to see you come
100%,
take the players out of the game.
100%. And my thing is, if you have interesting basketball, that's one thing. To me, if you are thinking that something's going to spill over from maybe off the court and you're trying to control the game,
Yeah.
that's a different thing. I just didn't get the sense of that throughout the course of this one. Now, maybe there was something that the officials had caught wind of early on, and they were just like, hey, we're just going to quell this from the very beginning, and then just overblew the whistle, which might have been the case there. One thing that really stuck out to me is Otego Oweh, the preseason player of the year. At the beginning of the year, we talked to Kobe Wilson and a few others that said, hey, they were using the words like effort. They were using just key words that you would not expect from a guy that is expected to have a high ceiling as he had. But he really came through in a big way. And you see his numbers here, 9 of 12 from the floor, 6 free throws, 8 boards, 3 assists, 24 points. To me, this team kind of goes as he goes. I know they have some talent around him, but this Kentucky team shot 54% from the floor. And knocked out a bunch of three-pointers. Looking at their stat sheet, they knocked down 6 three-pointers. He had a couple of them. Oh, he didn't have any of them, but he did have a lot of the points in the paint for this team. I just think that when Kentucky's playing like this, are they better than Florida? I don't know. Are they better than Vanderbilt? I don't know because they lost to Vanderbilt, but they are dangerous.
Yeah, and I think this is what the Kentucky staff saw in the $22 million that they dished out to this team this year, but it eerily feels like this is the same thing that happened to Kansas last year. And where Kansas had the $20 million roster, they had Hunter Dickinson, the preseason Big 12 player of the year, up there with the Naismith, in talks for the Naismith. But it seemed like they were up and then they were down. They had a stretch there at the beginning of Big 12 play, kind of like what Kentucky did this year in SEC play, where it was like, man, is this really a $20 million team?
Right.
And then they started to right the ship. Again, that's what Kentucky also did this year, before eventually falling short of what they thought was a team that could go far in March. So it almost feels like we're seeing this same story play out as the Kansas side last year, where it could end up being an early exit for Kentucky. I think that they're all but, as long as they don't implode over here. I mean, when you take a look at the next 5 games, they've got Oklahoma. They should win that game. And you would expect them to win against Tennessee because they're home this time. Florida, that might be the one game where you get tripped up, but then you have Georgia and Auburn. As long as they don't stumble and go like 1-4 over this stretch, I would almost expect them to be in the tournament.
Absolutely. We'll flip over to the Arkansas side really quickly here, because this is an Arkansas team, I think, coming into it. I don't think they were overconfident, but they were playing very, very well, and they had probably the best, if not the best, freshman in the country in Darius Acuff, and it just felt like they were never able to control the game. It felt like Kentucky just had control of this game. I think of this more of a one-off and not much for people to be concerned about. But it is kind of concerning the way that they lost, though, because I think there is a formula to beat Arkansas.
Yeah, and it's okay, you can let Darius Acuff do exactly what he wants, but if no one else around him does anything, like we've seen all year, that's when Arkansas starts to find themselves in trouble. When Malik Ewan isn't able to step up, Nick Pringle, we talked about him being in the starting lineup. If these guys, I mean, even Trevin Brazile, if these guys don't step up for Coach Calipari, I mean, Acuff could score 40 points and you still lose the game because it's just, he, as a freshman, can't really carry this team to where they want to be, even when some of these other guys have off nights. And when everybody has an off night, then that's when you see games like the Auburn game really take into effect.
Absolutely. This team has a really favorable stretch down the road coming up for Coach Calipari and his team. I think that this is an Arkansas team that they can put together a nice run here. These games, I mean, they should be favored in most of these games. I do think that this team can make a nice run here towards the end of February going into March.
Yeah, I mean, I think they get the benefit of not having a midweek game this week. A lot of teams have no midweek games this week. So you go on the road to Mississippi State, and then you take on LSU, 2 of the bottom half programs. There's chances for you to be able to find some stability. Then you have your get-back game against Auburn. The Alabama game might trip you up, but then a Missouri team comes to town with them right on the bubble, as we started to see. So, it's starting to get crunch time, especially for teams like Missouri, like Texas, like Auburn at this point. I mean, these bubble teams where they really need to pick up wins, that's the dangerous part for this Arkansas team.
That's exactly right. I think that Arkansas should be favored in all of them, but everybody that's on the schedule on the other side knows this could be a good, nice Q1 win for us. So look at everybody's best as they move forward, especially those teams in the bubble, like you mentioned with Missouri and others. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we will close up hour number 1 with a look at the Senior Bowl and some fun things in the port city of Mobile. The 77th Senior Bowl is now in the books, the first one under the new title sponsor in Panini. And Patrick, you and I were out there for Senior Bowl festivities. The NFL Draft is now officially started for a lot of these teams, and I heard a chance that you got an opportunity to catch up with some of these guys.
Yeah, I wanted to keep it light because this was the last day of practice. These guys were basically talking to all the scouts, getting ready to impress on Saturday, but did get the chance to catch up with them, and I asked them what their favorite home-cooked meals were. Let's take a listen.
My mom makes some bomb pozole, and she makes like the big olla of it, so it's like pozole is hard to make in like small batches, but she makes it like a big pot, so we eat it for like a week. And honestly, that's like the one meal that I can't not get when I'm home.
Penne alla vodka, chicken parm, either one of those. 'Cause I'm Italian, and Italians do that the best.
I'll probably say going home, get some good barbecue. We're a big grill, cookout type of family, so anytime we can get together and have a big barbecue, that's always my favorite meal. The ribs, and then I'll probably say after ribs, a nice big steak. We always get about 2, maybe 3 tomahawks, depending on how many people come in and cut it up and share it, and them things be delicious.
My mom makes a good snack. It's a little Kraft mac and cheese and sausage. So not the healthiest anymore, but when I was a kid and the diet didn't really matter, that's what I was eating them for a snack.
Yeah, gotta go with my granny home. She gonna cook me whatever, but whatever I tell, I probably go with some, baked beans, some macaroni, might get me a steak, ribs, mashed potatoes. Yeah, we eating good.
Rotel, it's fine. Probably some soul food. I don't get that a lot up north.
I love Thanksgiving food. So if it's Thanksgiving, that's my dish. Those are my dishes right there.
Ham or turkey?
Ham.
Spaghetti and fish. Where I'm from, we love spaghetti and fish, so it's different. Man, I love all things, even some simple tuna. I love my mama tuna. But for real, where you from besides fish and spaghetti? Rotel. Love the Rotel.
That's a wide range there.
Spaghetti and fish. That just sounds a little interesting to me.
It does, and I'm not a huge fish person, so I'm probably not the person to go to on this. But I do find it interesting though that he had such a wide variety. He had everything from chicken parm to mac and cheese to fish and spaghetti.
I'm gonna out myself here. I need to try Rotel.
You have to.
I have to.
It is good.
I haven't had it before.
It is good. It's a Southern staple. If you go to any tailgate, most tailgates around the South, you will find some Rotel. Hour number 2 of Southeast Sports Plus is next.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Gerhard Mathangani.
There is just one football game remaining. We wait all year long for the college football and NFL season, and now just one game remains. It is Super Bowl 60. Both teams, the Seattle Seahawks and New England Patriots, have landed in the Bay Area. And here's a look at the Seahawks over there in Santa Clara. Patriots, Seahawks will play there for Super Bowl 60 championship. And I'll tell you what, this is I think a lot of people did not have this Super Bowl. I think a lot of people find this Super Bowl interesting for a lot of reasons, and especially some reasons that we will talk about as we break it down here in the second hour of Southeast Sports Plus. I am Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, I've heard a lot of people that say, okay, I'm interested in this because it is a Super Bowl, but not necessarily as full throttle interested as they might have been had it been maybe the two number one seeds with Seattle and Denver. Had the Rams been here maybe instead. I find this as an interesting matchup. I'm personally obviously interested for a lot of different reasons, but I don't know how the nation feels about this game because I heard a lot of mixed reviews.
Yeah, and I mean, it would have been right if Seattle and Denver were playing in Super Bowl 60 because, you know, everyone wants to talk about 2016 in 2026 and everyone wants to go back 10 years ago. Well, if you go back 10 years ago in the NFL, Super Bowl 50, it was Carolina. And I mean, the Panthers did have a chance to advance. They honestly, up until that Seattle game that the Rams played, they gave the Rams the most run. They gave them a run for their money there. I think the Rams were like 10.5-point favorites in that game on the road. So I mean, at least you end the season with the cover. But I think when we were talking championship games, it was a 75% chance that we were going to get a Super Bowl rematch of some sort. It was going to be probably, you know, you talk about Seattle and the Broncos going way back in the day. Obviously, Seattle and the Patriots is one of the more infamous Super Bowls in recent memory. And then you flip it to the other side, the Patriots and the Rams. So the only one that wasn't really recent or has ever been played is Denver and the Rams.
And so we do get that rivalry of a game that, as you said, created one of the more epic Super Bowl endings. If you're a Seattle fan, you want to erase those memories.
Epic.
Yeah, I mean,
that for you, it's epic.
Unbelievably unbelievably epic. As they decided not to go to beast mode with the football, and they end up throwing the football, and Russell Wilson throws it straight into the hands of Malcolm Butler.
Before we get into our next topic, this just came into my head, and I don't want to forget about it. Let's play a quick game of what do you think is the biggest Super Bowl upset in history?
I would say, okay, I'm going to be a little biased here.
Yeah.
And I don't know by the number, but I do remember by the feel. When the New England Patriots played at that point, it was the St. Louis Rams and the greatest show on turf. Patriots entered that game as a 2-touchdown underdog. 14-point underdog. I mean, that's crazy in a regular season game, much less a Super Bowl. And that Patriots team ended up winning there as well. I think that might be one of, if not the biggest upsets in Super Bowl history.
I want to see what this line was for Do you remember what the line was? I mean, when this Super Bowl was played, betting wasn't really mainstream as it is now.
Right.
Broncos Seahawks. Because it felt like when you go off of feel, it felt like everyone was talking about Peyton Manning and throwing for 50 touchdowns that year going up against the Legion of Boom. But nobody was talking about Russell Wilson going up against the Broncos defense.
Right.
So, and that was a blowout. Like that was
35. Yeah, it was 48
to 3.
Yeah.
Like just absolute blowout. And I was sitting on my couch last year watching last year's Super Bowl, and I was like, man, I think this is how I felt when I was watching the Broncos Seahawks, but I couldn't really remember because I was like 10 when that was the thing. But I don't remember what the line was, or if there even was a line that was so mainstream.
On the first thing that I pulled up, it says it wasn't a huge underdog. I can give you the top 5 underdogs though.
Yeah.
So I know it's not more than 11.5, but the biggest underdogs of all time in Super Bowl history, and I should have got this. In 1969, the Jets were an 18-point dog to the Baltimore Colts. That was Joe Namath guaranteeing a win. They came out and won. I didn't realize
they can't do anything ever since.
And they have not won a single Lombardi Trophy ever since then. That was back in Super Bowl III. I should have remembered that. I just forgot how big of a dog they were. Yeah. The number 2 was the game that I brought up, the New England Patriots, 2 touchdown dogs against the greatest show on turf, the St. Louis Rams. The number 3 was the New York Giants against the Patriots in 2008. That was the season that New England undefeated season, in my opinion, the best team of all time, but stymied by the New York Giants. They were a 12.5-point dog in that one. The Kansas City Chiefs were a 12-point dog against the Minnesota Vikings in 1970. That was back in Super Bowl IV. And then you have the Denver Broncos, who are an 11.5-point dog in 1998 against the Green Bay Packers. So those are your top 5 as far as biggest underdogs going into that game.
Guess I showed my age there a little bit. But it felt like everyone was talking about Peyton Manning, and everyone was talking about Richard Sherman, and all of those. The 12th man on defense up there in Seattle, and nobody was talking about the other side of the equation, where I think we had a game like that this year with football in the SEC, where everyone was talking about offense versus defense, but nobody was talking about the other side, and it just reminded me of that game. But I guess I was going off of feel, but I'm going to give you the floor because you talked a little bit from Hancock Whitney Stadium last week at the Senior Bowl about Bill Belichick being snubbed out of a first ballot Hall of Fame bid.
Yeah.
And now the longtime Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, is also not going to be elected into the Hall of Fame this year. What are your thoughts?
This is, to me, not as big of a shock as it was last week. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because they did change the way that the voting is constructed. So if you're asking how is Robert Kraft up for a spot in the Hall of Fame, well, it's up for contributor. And so there's a contributions to the game kind of a sidebar where he could get in. Now, I do feel like the voting this year kind of pitted those two against each other. Now, did they just end up stealing each other's votes? Maybe. We don't know unless the voting comes out. I do think it's crazy on its surface that he is not a Hall of Famer right now. He will eventually be a Hall of Famer. I think it is even more egregious. The Bill Belichick is still number 1 of the most egregious of all time.
Without a doubt.
It superseded Terrell Owens because Terrell Owens was the number 1 snub of like, what are we doing in this Pro Football Hall of Fame? But receivers, just like historically, sometimes receivers have to wait a little bit longer than quarterbacks and even offensive linemen and defensive guys there as well. So I'm not as bent out of shape as I was last week about it, but I'd be lying if I said that I don't think that it creates an undercurrent for the Patriots going into this game. Does it create a little bit of motivation? I think so. I think if most guys on that team did not play for Bill Belichick. Well, I'm not going to say most. Say a lot of guys on the Patriots team did not play for Bill Belichick. So there might not be that same connection there. But you see him all over the halls, all over the walls. You see him holding up trophies. You feel a part of him. You feel a part of that organization. Mike Vrabel, of course, played for and won Super Bowls with Bill Belichick. Does he come in with an extra chip on his shoulder? I think so. Everybody gets their paycheck signed by Robert Kraft. Do they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder? Yeah, and I think that if you're on the Patriots, if you're Mike Vrabel, it is the easiest way to garner support around your team by saying nobody likes us.
Yeah.
Like everybody hates us. And
you're the universal villain.
Yes.
Like that's just what I think of.
And lean into it like a rallying cry. Now, in the year that the United States of America is celebrating its 250th birthday, do I think it's kind of fitting that the team that represents the United States, not represents the United States of America, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
mascot.
The mascot represents what America stands for. Do I think that there's some, maybe some Team of Destiny-ish things that are going on there? Maybe so. However,
Gerhard's
as you said,
on the superstition.
I mean, somewhat superstition, but it just reminds me because they are going to wear a patch. Yeah. The 250th anniversary patch. It's just going to look cleaner on the Patriots uniforms than it will on anybody else because they are the Patriots. They wear red, white, and blue. But people will say the Houston Texans also wear red, white, and blue too. So, but I do think that there is an added sense of camaraderie if you're in New England, because I think this is a guy that a lot of people like, a lot of people respect.
Yeah.
And now he is on his third coach that is in a Super Bowl. Let me think about that. Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, and then he had to make the tough decision last year, fire Gerard Mayo, who was once one of his captains of his teams, and then say, hey, get him out.
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel is in, and now they're back in the Super Bowl. So I'm not as bent out of shape. I don't know if I understand it, but it can be a rallying cry in my opinion.
Last question before we move on to the actual game itself. Do you think that this was partially because of there's been some growing animosity between Belichick and Robert Kraft? Obviously, Belichick earlier this season, we talked about how they barred the Patriots from accessing practice and stuff like that, and the scouts. No Patriots, anything on the walls inside the UNC facility. Do you think these voters were like, well, we didn't let Bill Belichick in, so we can't really let Robert Kraft in because of this growing animosity between the two? Then there might be this perception of bias, so to speak.
A bit, but let me give you the other guys that were on the ballot.
Yeah,
Roger Craig, Ken Anderson, and L.C. Greenwood were the players that were under this contributor list with Bill Belichick because, like I said, the voting changed. I don't know if much more of a better contributor to football. No disrespect to Mr. Craig, Mr. Anderson, and Mr. Greenwood. No disrespect to any of them. I don't know if their contributions to football supersedes Bob Kraft's contributions to football. Do I think that there might be a sense of I'm not going to vote one in, so I don't vote any of them in? There might be some of that. I think you have to look at those individual people that made those votes. But keep in mind what started this whole thing last week was the notion that Bill Polian basically submerged he basically had the undercurrent and telling people not to vote because of Spygate and because of Deflategate and all the gates that the Patriots are allegedly said to be a part of. Did some of that ring true for the voters that did not have Bill Belichick on their ballot? Does some of that also ring true for Robert Kraft?
Yeah.
Because he's like, I know they're not saying that he was over there setting up cameras in the wrong spots or deflating footballs, but he was the top dog, the top person on the totem pole for the organization that did. Maybe guilty by association, possibly so. I think there has to be something to do with that.
But you still, it goes back to what I was saying about Belichick. And I said on the show, I grew up not liking Belichick, but I also am a fan of sport. I can accept greatness. I grew up because I was a Cowboys fan and I didn't like seeing them win all the time. So that's the only reason why I didn't like him. But now that he's done and in the college ranks, talking about Bill Belichick, obviously I can appreciate greatness. Yeah,
and I think that there's to your point about the growing animosity, and there's growing animosity between these two individuals anyways. Robert Kraft last week tried to quell a lot of that. I'll give you his direct quote. He was basically saying, whatever perceptions may exist about any personal differences between Bill and I strongly believe Bill Belichick's record and body of work speaks for themselves. And so he basically says he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Is there an element of, I know Tom Brady won't be eligible in 2028. Yeah. I do think that this could have a kind of cool ending if they change up the voting once again, or they change up the process of voting once again and make it to where they have to wait 4 years instead of 5. and Brady becomes eligible next year. Is there a chance that you can put in the 3 figureheads of the dynasty all at the same time?
That would be pretty cool.
There's a possibility for that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rob Gronkowski is also going to be up next year as well. So if you can have
the 4
heads of the greatest dynasty of football, then all of this might be, hey, the football gods are just, are playing this music kind of beautifully.
Yeah.
And you might be mad on the front end. It could have a happy ending on the back.
I forget. Is Vinatieri in the Hall of Fame?
I think he's all. I have to go back and check. I don't know if he's in or not. I know he was.
That would be the 5 right there.
Yeah, because then you'd have Gronk was kind of the back half.
Yeah.
Because there's
Vinatieri was
2
nailed.
rings. Oh yeah. Yes. Let me pull up Vinatieri in the Hall of Fame. I thought he was in, but I'm not
I thought
sure.
I remember seeing that he was in.
He's a finalist for this year. He's a finalist for this year.
I'd just wait. Just wait and just send them all in at the same time.
That would be really cool.
That would be cool. That's the only way you can make the best out of this situation. But it has to be in Brady's first year, because if Brady isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, then honestly, I don't care who gets elected after that.
Well, you're making him. Yes. To me,
what meaning does it hold anymore when you have the GOAT? And honestly, I'd like to, real quick before we go to break, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Who is the true GOAT? Is it Belichick or is it Brady?
The further we get away from the dynasty, I happen to think that this is a players' league. Yeah. I happen to think that this is that, and even Bill Belichick says this all the time. He says coaches can scheme up, and the smartest coaches, I think in football, the smartest coaches are in the NFL.
Yeah.
I do think though it's a players' league, and the fact that Tom Brady went to Tampa.
Yeah, he won another Super Bowl without him.
And then won a Super Bowl, and we saw how much Bill Belichick kind of, treaded water, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think it is a lot easier to say the guy that takes the football for 70 to 80 plays a game, he was the guy. It's just hard to say that given what Brady looked like in the first 3 Super Bowls, where he wasn't the catalyst at all.
Right.
It was a strong defense and a strong running game. He grew in to being the GOAT of the greatest quarterback of all time through his time with Bill Belichick. So the early years Belichick, the late years Tom Brady, and once again they have a chance to add another Lombardi.
Well, you talked about a strong defense. What do the Patriots have this year? A strong defense.
That's
what
right.
Do they have this year? A young quarterback who is up and down in the playoffs. We'll actually talk about the game after the break.
We're back on Southeast Sports Plus. Several former SEC players set to take the field in Super Bowl 60 coming up this week. Seattle Seahawks and New England Patriots will play on Sunday for the Lombardi Trophy. This is a rematch, of course, of a game we saw not that long ago. But a lot of things have changed since then. There's a new Seahawks coach going from Pete Carroll to Mike McDonald. There's a new Patriots coach going from Bill Belichick to Mike Vrabel. Both quarterbacks are different as well. Different storylines with these quarterbacks because one, you have a guy in Sam Darnold who came in as a red-hot prospect, bounced around the league for a little while. A lot of people have bailed on him, including last year. He played for the Minnesota Vikings, struggled in the playoffs. Then on the other side, you have Drake May, who came in rookie season, had your normal rookie mistakes, but then also bounced back this year and now in the MVP hunt.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk more about the Seahawks side tomorrow, but got to give credit to Sam Darnold. He's got to be the first USC quarterback to start the Super Bowl. That's pretty cool. UCLA did that a long time ago with Aikman, way back in the day. But you take a look at Drake May, and it feels like this whole season, in the Patriots in general, I mean, I still can't believe they lost to the Raiders the first week of the season.
Exactly,
and then 2 weeks later, they lose to
Pittsburgh.
the Steelers, in which they turned the ball over
five times. Still lost the game by 3, yeah.
So lost the game by 3 after turning the ball over 5 times, and then after that, it seemed like they were unbeatable up until the Bills game. But I mean, it just goes to show what good quarterback play does in this league. And I mean, what Drake May has been able to do in his second year, first under Mike Vrabel, I mean, it's just been incredible.
Second youngest quarterback to start in a Super Bowl game next to Dan Marino. What makes that really interesting is that everybody thought Dan Marino was a can't-miss kid, can't-miss dude. Dan Marino never got back to the Super Bowl after that. No. Not once. So these things aren't guarantees. And so I think Drake May kind of understands that going into this week. And I think there was a lot of people who talked about the Patriots schedule. And yes, it was historically, not just this year. This year, it was number 32 of 32. It was the easiest schedule in football. Yeah. But historically, I think it was top 3 all time when you consider since the merger, when you're ranking your strength of schedule, I think it's top 3, top 5 all time easiest schedule in football. But some of the other best teams to ever win a championship also played a very easy schedule as well. So I think he's been boosted by just being able to see wins. We talk about this in basketball all the time. A lot of times, just from a confidence standpoint, just watching the ball go in the hoop just does wonders for you from just a mental standpoint. I think just being able to stack wins in the middle of the season was huge for Drake May. He carried that into the postseason.
Yeah, and I think it also goes to show what a new head coach can do for you. I mean, I thought Gerhard Mathangani was a pretty good hire last year. Obviously had ties to the Patriots. Right. Was, as you mentioned, the captain. Won Super Bowls under Bill Belichick. It just didn't end up working out. And so they went ahead and they got Mike Vrabel to be their next head coach. And I think it's just the benefit. The Patriots this year benefited from the scheduling system where, you know, most of these teams that you play out of your division are based on where you finished the year before.
Correct.
They obviously finished last in the AFC East, so they're playing all of these teams that also finished last in their divisions last year. So, I mean, that definitely helps, and I don't think we're going to really see maybe I was about to say I don't think we're really going to see something like this soon, but I almost feel like this could be exactly what the Giants follow next year with Harbaugh.
Correct.
Because, I mean, the Giants have some pieces there. Harbaugh's a culture guy. They're going to have a pretty easy schedule next year. I'd be a little bit worried about them. But, I mean, when you look at what Vrabel has done for Drake May, 40-plus touchdowns, as you mentioned, in the MVP hunt this year, it's been a little bit up and down in the postseason.
A little shaky.
That worry you a little bit?
It has to. I think it has to. I think the biggest thing, though, is the number of turnovers that he's had. And I know he's played some vaunted defenses. Yeah. This has been a guy that has played some really good defenses. Then there's some talk that his shoulder might be a little banged up there as well. But the numbers really don't blow you away. For a guy that was one of the top guys throwing the football down the field especially, it seems like that necessarily has gone, but it's not the same way it used to be. He has 4 touchdowns overall, but he threw 3 in one game by itself. I think it was the Houston game.
Yeah.
Threw 3 touchdowns. They're in that game. Threw 1 against the Chargers, and obviously none against the Denver Broncos. And so I do think that there is a bit of a concern going up against yet another big-time defense. So it's the Chargers defense who came in really hot. It was the Broncos and Texans defense. And then now it's the Seattle defense, and they're good at all 3 levels. They're good at rushing, they're good at getting to the quarterback, and they're good on the back end with their corners and their safeties. Can they find some wrinkles here and there? And I think, can they keep Drake May upright? I think that they said that he's been sacked, I think it's like 50-something times.
Yeah,
so it's been a lot of sacks so far this season. I'll get you that. He's been sacked 15 times in the playoffs.
Yeah,
and
I mean, you just can't have that.
Right.
And you're taking all these hits as a quarterback. I know you're still young, but eventually they'll start to add up, and you really don't want that. But I mean, as you mentioned, he's played some pretty good defenses. Obviously, Jesse Minter, the former defensive coordinator there with the Chargers, just landed a head coaching job. Then you look at the Texans defense this past year. I mean, they made Drake May, I just got to say it, they made him look bad at times.
They did, yeah.
Especially in that first half, but unfortunately for them, C.J. Stroud was just worse.
He was worse, yeah.
And then you go up against this Broncos defense in the AFC Championship, and the Broncos kept him in check. I mean, I think he finished with under 100 pass yards in that game, and it really was the one turnover from Jarrett Stidham, the fumble that led to the Drake May rushing touchdown that really changed the game like that. So, I mean, that's one thing that I would be a little bit concerned moving forward here as we get closer to Sunday.
Absolutely. The players are starting to trickle in with their sound bites and meeting the media. They had opening night on Monday night, another big media night coming up tonight. We heard from Drake May yesterday.
I think you give a lot of credit to people around me, coaches, players, new teammates, another year of the teammates that I did play with, and just to find confidence in myself of going out there and knowing that of what it's like playing in this league. Playing quarterback at a high level in this league is hard, and knowing that the preparation you put into it is what you get out of it, and knowing every week is different. Postseason, I think, is it's about winning and going. I think the regular season you try to play as well as you can and play at a high level, and you try to treat the same in the postseason. But at the end of the day, the postseason is about winning and getting to this game and making winning plays. And we made enough of them on offense, and we haven't played up to the standard that we want on offense, but knowing that we have a chance to do that this Sunday is what keeps us going.
As always, former SEC guys have a chance to put the Super Bowl ring on their finger. And a lot of guys that have had various amounts of success that were on the college ranks. We'll go obviously start with the Patriots, continue with the Patriots. One of the guys that truly comes to mind is Hunter Henry, former Arkansas tight end, who's had a really solid career. I know he bounced around a little bit, went from the Chargers now over to New England. He's a guy that has been a key player for this team over the course, I would say, of this entire season, and almost like a safety net for Drake May.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a great way to put tight ends in general. I mean, when you look at some of the greatest tight ends in the game, Travis Kelce is a safety net for Patrick Mahomes. You look at Jason Witten back when he was playing. He was a safety net for Tony Romo. And some of these other guys, Trey McBride this year really stepped into his own and was a safety net for Jacoby Brissett and Kyler Murray when Murray played. But I think when you're looking at this team in general, and we had been talking about Drake May and the struggles that he has had in the postseason, I think he's got to go back to Hunter Henry. He had that touchdown against the Chargers, as you mentioned, former Charger, but since then just really hasn't stepped up for this team. But I think he can be that guy that Drake May can totally rely on as the game gets late if he needs to, just chuck it up, get a nice big-time touchdown grab or get that first down.
Right. The Patriots' leading receiver in these playoffs so far is another former SEC guy, and Kayshon Boutte, who's been absolutely unbelievable. It started off with this one-handed catch that was earlier in these playoffs, just an unbelievable grab. He has really kind of completely turned around his narrative, and I think a lot of people at LSU said that, hey, he's got the talent, all the talent in the world. Can be a bit of a knucklehead, so to speak, to put it lightly. But it seems to me that once Stephon Diggs has gotten to that locker room and gotten to that wide receiver room, it feels like everybody's kind of matured and stepped their game up a little bit. But from LSU to now the Super Bowl, you think about guys like Odell Beckham Jr., you think about guys like Jamar Chase, think about guys like Justin Jefferson, you think about these players that make these big plays in the SEC. You know that these guys, they've played in rough environments. They played against Alabama. They've played, against Georgia. They played in SEC championships. I know Kayshon Boutte hasn't played in all three of those games, but he has played in big-time environments. So I always expect the SEC guys to play well because they've seen and been through the heat, even though it's not Super Bowl heat.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, this could be a wild take, but I feel like the Super Bowl pressure is a little bit of a different pressure than if you're playing your rival.
Yeah.
Because when you play your rival, most of the pressure is going to be actually in the stadium there at the game.
Correct.
When you look at the Super Bowl nowadays, it seems like, most of the tickets are handed out, corporate sponsorships.
Right.
I mean, it makes it so hard for the true fan to be able to go to the game. So, I mean, you're not really going to have that pressure. You're going to have the pressure of, all right, I've got 200 cameras on me with the entire world watching. The pressure comes from the people watching at home. But, I mean, as some coaches like to say, pressure makes diamonds.
That's true, yeah.
I think we could really see a situation here where Kayshon Boutte, I'm not going to get into the player prop bets just yet. We'll make those predictions on Friday. But Could we see north of 100 receiving yards? Could Drake May light up this defense? I mean, Matt Stafford did 2 weeks ago.
That's right. He did. And I think that there's a certain formula that you have to play in order to light this defense up. Yeah. And we'll dive into those X's and O's coming up in over the course of this week, and also talk a lot more Seattle there as well. But head coach Mike Vrabel, year one on the job there in New England, of course, was a former New England Patriots player, now a head coach, was a coach at Tennessee. Now he's back in Foxborough and back in the Super Bowl.
It's humbling to be in this experience and being grateful for their efforts, because without them, I don't get to sit here. I don't get to prepare for this game, and so I appreciate and I'm proud to be their football coach. This has all changed a lot. We were in the stadium. We sat in the stands, and you guys came up and interviewed us, and there was a couple people on the podium. I don't know necessarily, what the difference is. We're just trying to prepare. We're trying to get ready, but there's not a huge difference between being a player in this game or being a coach. I mean, obviously the player's going to go out and win it.
Last year, the team won 4 games under Gerhard Mathangani. This year, they finished the regular season 14-3. They have 3 playoff wins. They're 17-3. That is a 14-game turnaround if they are to win the Super Bowl. I don't know if he's going to win Coach of the Year. I just don't know if I've seen a turnaround job at any place 1 year. Of course, Kirk Cignetti was just was absolutely, that is number one if you're talking about a program change overall. But in a 1 year, what this team was last year to what this team is this year, I don't know if I've seen a 1 year coaching job like this.
No, and I think if he doesn't win Coach of the Year, it's the only other choice would be Mike Macdonald, who's going up against. I mean, what he was able to do. A lot of people thought that, Geno Smith wasn't really he was basically a one-hit wonder with that first year over there in Seattle. They move on from Smith. He goes over to I almost said Oakland. He moves on, goes to Vegas, doesn't have a great year. They bring in Sam Darnold, who won 14-plus games with the Vikings last year, and the Vikings ended up moving on. I mean, that decision alone, seeing where Darnold is now, got their GM fired. And it's just an unfortunate situation over there.
And the Seattle GM just won Executive of the Year.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's just crazy what happens when, you trusted Sam Darnold. And, again, we'll get more into Sam Darnold tomorrow. But I don't know about you, but I'd be a little bit concerned. I only say that because I know you're a true New England fan. But you take a look at some of the offenses that this team went up in the postseason.
Yeah.
The Chargers were faltering down the stretch. They couldn't block anybody. It was like the security guards when everybody starts rushing the field. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
C.J. Stroud, I mean, I don't even know what you can call that game. That was probably worse than Nathan Peterman just based on the situation.
Oh, the stakes.
For sure. Stakes in it. I mean, that was just one of the all-time forgettable, if you're C.J. Stroud performances in postseason history. And then, no disrespect to Jarrett Stidham or anything, but that was his first start in 2 years in a snow globe in the second half. And it really makes you wonder, would this have been a little bit different with Bo Nix? Now you're actually going to go up against a guy, albeit a guy that said just a few short years ago when he was with the Jets, said that he sees ghosts when he plays the Patriots.
And I do feel like if you're a New England fan, that's for those of us that root for the Patriots, I don't know if this defense has seen as lethal of an offense since we played the Buffalo Bills. I believe that was in week 16, 17, or no, like week 15.
Week 15, yeah.
And in that game, if you don't remember, Patriots got up 21-0 and lost the football game.
Yeah.
So I do think there is a growing cause for concern because this is, in my opinion, I think Puka Nacua is probably the best receiver in football. JSN is right there. Yeah. Sam Darnold is coming off a great performance against Robert Saleh and the San Francisco 49ers, coming off a great performance against the LA Rams. They're running the football really well. They're throwing the football obviously really well.
You're sleeping on my Kenneth Walker pick.
And Kenneth Walker's playing well as well. I heard a guy today for Seattle saying he was probably one of the hardest guys to tackle. They were talking about how he talks to him in practice. I do think that this easily is the best offense that New England has seen in the last month or so. So is the production defensively a product of who they've played, or is the defense legitimately good and can stand toe-to-toe with Seattle? If it is and can stand toe-to-toe with Seattle, we can get the same kind of Super Bowl that we got a few years ago, which everybody hated, 13-3, when the Patriots and Rams played in Atlanta. I loved it because I love defensive football, and of course I'm a Patriots fan. But there wasn't a lot of points there. But if not, and Sam Darnold is healthy, and this defense is not as good, we could see a track meet.
Yeah, we'll see, and we'll give our predictions as we get closer. I think that they're a product of the schedule, but that's not any disrespect to them by any means. I mean, they're just playing the teams that was put in front of them, so you can't fault them for that.
Yeah.
I mean, these teams won the games that they needed to make it to the playoffs, and it just so happened to be that, you know, Bo Nix goes down with an injury. C.J. Stroud starts seeing ghosts out of there, and then the Chargers can't block anybody.
Exactly right. So the New England Patriots and Seattle Seahawks battle Super Bowl 60 on Sunday. Coming up next, it's the game, not air quotes, game. Before then, it is the Pro Bowl coming up tonight. We'll break that down coming up next. Well, the annual tradition before the Super Bowl, it is the Pro Bowl, but it looks very, very different here in 2026. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. Hour number 2 continues. Several former SEC players are going to the Pro Bowl, but keep in mind, this isn't a game like it used to be. It used to be a true blue All-Star game, like the Major League Baseball All-Star game, like the NBA All-Star game, but except it's here in the middle of Super Bowl week, and I'll give my take on it in just a little bit. But what do you make of this going to the game style where we see a lot more hijinks, so to speak, than we do actual football?
I mean, I don't really know. Like it's just such a weird thing because I saw Brandon Aubrey hitting 330-yard drives. I know he's got an absolute cannon for a leg. And he can, I'm sure one day he'll make a 70-yard field goal.
Right.
But, I mean, it's like, why in the world are we – I don't know if we're trying to get to something different because at this point, in my opinion, the Pro Bowl is just glorified flag football, and nobody really 100%. Wants to watch that up until the Olympics in 2028 when there's going to be flag football in the Olympics.
Right.
Then it might be entertaining when there's something to play for.
Yeah.
But I just can't think of a more, in my opinion, meaningless event than maybe the NBA All-Star Game. Like that. Those are the two leagues that I feel like have some traction here in the United States.
Right.
I know a lot of people are starting to pick up the NBA. Programs are starting to advertise it a little bit more and put more into it. But they're also the two leagues that have the most meaningless All-Star weekend.
Correct.
Type
yeah.
events.
Yeah, and I think that the NBA game, they've both leagues have tried to tweak their All-Star games because in pro football, obviously you don't have the representatives that of the best teams because the two teams that are playing in the Super Bowl aren't going to play in these Pro Bowl games. Secondly, I think that a lot of guys started to see this is kind of a product of how much money they're making. There used to be incentivized to play in the games because they would make an extra 30, 50, 60, 100K. That's now kind of off the board, and these guys aren't incentivized by $100,000 because they are making so much money, especially at certain positions. And then thirdly, I think that you're getting the fact that there's now an 17 game regular season, got the playoffs there as well.
Could be 18 soon, by the way.
Yeah, right. And these guys could just be beat up. You know, they don't play. It's not like a 14 game season like they used to be, or a 16 game season like it was for a while. Now playing 18 games, and so now we're seeing, you know, guys that might not belong get in these games, and that includes the former I was going to say Brown star. He's a star in the celebrity sense, not necessarily a star in the football sense.
He's a star in the music scene.
Correct, yes. But Shedeur Sanders is going to make an appearance in the Pro Bowl mainly because of all the people that dropped out.
Yeah, and I mean, how can you – this is no disrespect to Shedeur Sanders by any means. I mean,
no.
I think he's going to do great things for the Browns. I think who's over there now? Todd Monken?
Yeah, Monken, yeah.
I think he's going to be able to flourish under Todd Monken. But it's just, how can you see this stat line and say, yeah, Pro Bowler with 18.9 QBR? Like I just don't know how far this game has fallen. And honestly, we could both go down the rabbit hole of where did this game start to go down. In my opinion, I think it started to go downhill when they took it out of Hawaii. That was actually kind of cool. The fact that you go out to Hawaii every year, and that was the last true feel. And then they moved it to Orlando, and it started to lose a little bit of its meaning. And now it just feels like, let's just have it. I don't even know really what to call it. Like, let's just have these guys play a bunch of different sports,
PE
not named
games.
football. Yeah,
like a bunch of rec PE games.
Phys ed class.
Yes.
Like it's like the field days.
Right, exactly. And I think the NFL's trying to tweak it because the game got to be an embarrassment. None of the guys are playing defense, and I do think they needed to tweak it. And at least in the basketball All-Star game, they've tweaked the ending and the way that the games end. So you do see that effort being put in on the back end, even though it's like 177 to 175. And so like you kind of have to roll your eyes to the first three quarters, and then you really get some good fun there in the fourth quarter. But this is a little bit different. It'll be interesting to see. It almost feels like now we should just have these guys are Pro Bowlers. These guys aren't Pro Bowlers, and then just let it be. Like, okay, all right, so this is the Pro Bowl team.
Yeah.
Roll it out, and then be done with everything else. Because to me, to wrap it in all of that seems to, not necessarily hold water. But that said, there are a lot of former SEC guys that are in this whole thing.
And before we get into that real quick, I was just trying to brainstorm of a potential solution. And I mean, I take what the NHL did with Four Nations and their 3-on-3 before it. Maybe you could make a game out of you could split the United States into four, like four quadrants, and then have each four quadrants and have like a mini tournament style. And then if you win the tournament, like I think in the 3-on-3 All-Star game that the NHL did, the winners get like $1 million each, or like something like that. So like incentivize it or something. But I mean, the NBA is still unwatchable for me. Four Nations was probably the best thing that the NHL's ever did, because that got eyes on the game like never before. The MLB one is the only one that truly feels like an all-star game.
Correct.
Because these guys are still actually trying in the games, albeit the pitchers only usually pitch for 1 or 2 innings.
Yeah.
It still feels like an all-star game.
It does, and I wonder how much of this is because of where it is placed. Because the other 2 all-star games, they're placed in the middle of the calendar year. And so
that's true, yeah.
You get, in basketball, you get kind of a break. In baseball, you get kind of a break. In baseball, it sits very well on the calendar, because there is nothing going on in the world of sports for the most part. Every now and again, it might be a lead up to the Olympics, but usually in that middle part of July, nothing is going on. So you add the fact that it's a break in the middle of the year. You can reassess your first half. You can look towards your second half. The trade deadline is coming up. So that's the part of the reason why I do feel like it is the truest form of an all-star game to me. A lot of times your hockey all-star break, sometimes it runs in parallel with the Olympic Games. So it doesn't necessarily, it's a break, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a break. And so I don't know. I feel like these Pro Bowl games, I do feel like in 5 years we won't be doing this anymore.
No.
It'll just be
extinct.
It'll just be, we'll name who the Pro Bowl team is, like the All-Pro. They just name who the team is, and then that's that. And that's that.
But as you mentioned, we do have some former SEC standouts on. Let's start with the AFC team.
Yeah, let's start with that AFC team there. You got Joe Burrow. So, I mean, that's not to just, slam the fact that Shedeur Sanders is on there. I mean, there are some heavy hitters. That includes the former LSU star in Joe Burrow and his former Bengal Tiger teammate, running mate there in Jamar Chase. James Cook, who was an outstanding star at Georgia, now in Buffalo, coming up a really good year as well. David Etienne of Texas A&M, now with the Miami Dolphins, and Trey Smith, the former Tennessee star. We also have Creed Humphrey of Oklahoma. Will Anderson, who won the defensive rookie of the year last year, former Alabama star. Also Jeffrey Simmons of Mississippi State, and Nick Benito of Oklahoma, and Roquan Smith there of Georgia. Also Derek Stingley Jr. out of LSU, Patrick Surtain, the reigning defensive player of the year in football out of Alabama, Kamari Lassiter of Georgia, Cameron Dicker from Texas. And as far as the Florida goes, they're represented by DK over there with the Florida Gators. And this, to me, I mean, it's a nice group of players to me that I feel like can make some noise, so to speak, in these Pro Bowl games. It does give it a heavy hitter feel to it with these guys. And so, I mean, if nothing else, you have some stars in the field.
Yeah, and you definitely have some stars on the other side too. And there's no secret that this first graphic is dominated by Cowboys, but it just makes you wonder, how in the world do you have this trio and you don't make the playoffs? It's just crazy. But Jalen Hurts, the former Oklahoma and Alabama star, Dak Prescott, obviously had that great run there at Mississippi State. George Pickens came from Georgia, and then CeeDee Lamb had a really nice career over there at Oklahoma. Moving on, Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama, Bijan Robinson out of Texas, Trent Williams and Quinnen Williams from Oklahoma and Alabama, respectively, and then Byron Young out of Tennessee, J.C. Horn and Keyshawn Nixon out of South Carolina, and Tress Way, the punter there out of Oklahoma.
I think, as far as star power goes, I think the AFC is just lined with it. I'm really excited to see the AFC team. But AFC. Okay. That's Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. I like that group. Will Anderson, Patrick Surtain.
Yeah.
Will that equate to winning? The games that they play? I have no idea. I'm just saying from a star power perspective.
If they were playing actual football,
correct,
it would probably be a something fun to watch. But, I mean, I think the AFC is better on the defensive side. I still have to give the offensive side to the NFC.
NFC,
I mean, what they were able to do and led that quarterback room led by some former SEC stars and Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott, obviously NFC East rivals now. I mean, I feel like both of these quarterbacks, real quick here, I feel like they're starting to enter a bit of an interesting time in their career, because Dak, coming off a pretty good year, didn't know how well he would play after the hamstring injury.
Yeah.
Actually had a really nice year, was in MVP talks for a little bit until, the Cowboys just imploded down the stretch. And then Jalen Hurts, we talk about it all the time. I think, he's going on his 14th play caller?
Yes.
Since high school? Since high school. I mean, it's a new guy every year. Vic Fangio apparently is considering retirement. I mean, I don't know if this is what's going to happen with the Eagles. Who knows what's going to happen with A.J. Brown, but I just feel like both of these quarterbacks are entering some interesting years in their careers.
I do too, because obviously both guys are veterans, and Jalen Hurts has 2 Super Bowl appearances and a Super Bowl championship that he won last year. Dak's still chasing his first one, but Dak playing on probably the most visible franchise in the NFL, in the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. And I think too, it's a Cowboys team to me. I know that they were banged up a little bit. It's a Cowboys team to me that I feel like they feel they're closer to a championship than maybe they are. But I think that Jerry Jones thinks, hey, we solidify some spots on defense. We have the offense to make it happen. And if we're in an offensive league right now, I think that he thinks that this team is closer to a championship.
I don't know what they're going to open at. And this is not the fan in me speaking, by the way. There's no bias in this in this take. I don't know what they're going to open at to make the playoffs next year, but I would hammer it. I mean, with the draft picks that they have, they just got the Eagles passing game coordinator and defensive backs coach.
Right.
Cooper DeJean was talking highly about him.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're talking highly about him because he's going to Dallas and they're like, oh, he's bad, but he's actually good. But I mean, with all those draft picks that they have, I'm sure Jerry Jones has a history of drafting well.
Right.
They have to absolutely knock it out of the park on defense. And if you could get George Pickens back next year, I don't see why. It's going to sound crazy. I don't see why they won't be a Super Bowl contender, because they're going to have that Super Bowl contending offense.
Right.
And they should have the pieces on defense with Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, some of these other guys. Got to beef up the secondary and the linebacker core, but they have the draft to do it.
What do you think that their over/under will be? I try to find,
like
look
wins
at some
for next season.
I'll try to look at some offshore accounts and couldn't really find anything. Obviously, all those numbers will come out after the Super Bowl, but I was wondering, just in case a number comes out that's close to your number to hammer.
They finished second this year. I would take them at 10. I really would.
Okay.
I seriously think they're going to win.
9.5, you take the over, or 10.5, you take the over.
I'd even take the over at 10.5. I think they'll win 11+ games next year, just because they're. As long as Jerry Jones continues his trend of drafting well, I see no reason why they can't make the playoffs next year, just because that offense is so good. Javonte Williams should be coming back. As long as you can get George Pickens back, that offense is going to be great. You just got to beef up the defense.
Absolutely. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we dive into the first part of the midweek slate of games in the SEC and make some predictions. Stay tuned for that. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, closing up our Tuesday show. Another slate of games in the midweek section. 2 games tonight. We have another couple of games coming up tomorrow. And gearing up for a huge slate of games over this weekend. 2 games tonight. You have Tennessee and Ole Miss, and then Texas and South Carolina. The Tennessee-Ole Miss game is actually a really interesting one because it's 2 teams kind of going in different directions.
Yeah.
You have an Ole Miss team that has lost 3 in a row, and you have a Tennessee team that is on a nice, I believe it's a 3-game winning streak now, maybe if not 4-game winning streak.
I think
it was a 3-game winning streak now. So it's 3. They have won 3 in a row. You're right. Won 4 of their last 5 because they beat Texas A&M before losing to Kentucky. So a Tennessee team that's really confident going into this one, an Ole Miss team that's struggling. I find that one really interesting. And then, of course, Texas in what you call a haunted spot there at the Moody Center.
Yeah, I mean, and then they're going up against a South Carolina team that it's just it feels like nothing is going right for this team. I mean, it just you have to feel for Lamont Paris because it just seems like no matter what he does in practice or trying to motivate the guys, he's just unable to get anything going. I mean, the Florida loss last week was just inexcusable. I think that was their largest loss since I believe in the early 2000s against Syracuse up in Central New York. I mean, I think they lost by 48 points. So it's just it's one of those things where you can't lose by 48 points in general. You certainly can't lose it in conference, and you definitely can't lose by 48 points at home.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the kind of the triple whammy, so to speak, and that could kill a lot of your confidence in your team, though, too. So it could have a residual effect as they move forward, though. But a couple games on tap tonight.
3:57, you know what time it is.
It is time to play some ball. Here with the first one. It's 2 big games, 2 big spreads. So I kind of like it.
And this number has, as you've said, it started to trend more in Tennessee's direction.
That's right. So there's more money on Tennessee. A couple hours before tip-off is now a 13-point spread there. 13.5 actually for both games here. So the Texas line hasn't moved very much.
Yeah, I think 13.5 is a lot of points, especially for an SEC game, but it just things have not gone Ole Miss's way since their nice little win streak. It seemed like they had that magic, but this is 13.5 is starting to get into that gray area.
Yeah,
where it's just like I don't know what to. I'm actually going to go Ole Miss. I don't think they win. I think they cover though. Because their guard play is so good. Like AJ Storr is so good, even though Ole Miss just isn't having a great season. He still would Florida would love to have him.
Oh, no question. Last night, you're a big Syracuse fan. Last night, Syracuse played North Carolina. They were about 11, 12-point dog going into that matchup.
They were down by 34.
Got down by 34.
With like 6 minutes left, and then came back and covered.
Came back and covered. I think something similar can happen here where Tennessee takes their foot off the gas because guess who's coming up next? It is Kentucky.
Yeah.
So are they caught looking ahead just a little bit and then need to save their buns, so to speak, to be able to pick up a win? Me too. I like Ole Miss to cover here. I do. I like Ole Miss to cover that game as well.
And then South Carolina at Texas at the Moody Center, 13.5-point favorites. 2 touchdown favorites.
They're a 2-tutty favorite. I just don't know if I expect Texas to blow a team out. But if there is going to be a team that you blow out, I think it is the South Carolina team. I like Texas all over South Carolina. It might look a little frosty, though, for the cover for a while. I think they pull it off on the free throw line.
Yeah, I don't know what this Texas team has done to warrant a 13-point spread, 13.5-point spread.
Yeah.
I think they win, but I think South Carolina actually covers just because I can't trust Texas really to cover that.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
2 dogs getting it done there on the road, according to Patrick. We will see you tomorrow on Southeast Sports Plus.